Let's return to our top story now. And the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected to arrive in Israel very shortly. Let's cross live to our Middle East correspondent, Yolande Nell, who has the latest from Jerusalem. Yolande, welcome to you. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken's sixth visit to the region since the October the 7th attacks by Hamas. He's already been in Egypt yesterday and Saudi Arabia the day before. What can we expect from his meetings today with the Prime Minister there?
So Antony Blinken is going to come fresh from those talks in Cairo with Arab ministers to meet the Israeli Prime Minister and the Israeli War Cabinet. Now, on his agenda, of course, getting more desperately needed aid into the Gaza Strip, with the threat of a man-made famine now looming large there. Then he'll also be talking about ongoing ceasefire negotiations, this deal that is on the table that would see Palestinian prisoners freed from Israeli jails in exchange for some of the remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza being released. And last night there was very sort of moving prayers at the Western Wall, with thousands of people turning out to remember those hostages still held by Hamas. Then Mr. Blinken also wants to talk about the prospect of an Israeli invasion of Rafah. This is something that Israel keeps saying it's determined to carry out, even if it doesn't have any international support for it. It says it can't win the war in Gaza without going to Rafah, the last place that has not seen a sort of large-scale Israeli invasion. The US has said it can't support that, and it's been very specific that this would be a grave mistake because of the dire humanitarian consequences. That border extremely important for aid coming across, but the biggest point, of course, is that you have more than half of the 2.3 million people in Gaza now living in Rafah. They're crammed down close to the Egypt border, most of them displaced by the fighting, and they were told by Israel earlier in the war to go there for their own safety.
Yolande, we know that the US has submitted for a vote on Friday to the UN a draft to the Security Council there on the need for an immediate ceasefire as part of a hostage deal. I imagine they will be talking about that. But what is the significance of the fact that they have submitted this vote when they've vetoed 3 other previous votes over the past 5 or so months?
Well, I mean, that's exactly it. The US has repeatedly shielded Israel at the UN Security Council. It's wielded its veto power there when necessary, when others have tried to push for a ceasefire. In the past, the US has said that that would tie Israel's hands in its operations against Hamas. Now you have the US itself, as part of the pressure it's putting on Israel, which sees Washington as its closest ally, really coming up with this draft resolution, pushing it for a vote. It's linking the call for an immediate and sustained ceasefire to the release of hostages, to those ongoing ceasefire talks. But that is a very significant move.
OK, Yolande, thank you. Well, our State Department correspondent Tom Bateman has been travelling with the US Secretary of State. He sent us this update from Cairo Airport.
Well, this trip to Cairo focused on Antony Blinken trying to get the support of Arab countries to back a plan, a post-war plan for Gaza, which would be around trying to secure Palestinian Authority governance in Gaza, so effectively having Palestinian control in the Gaza Strip, backed by Arab countries and crucially also financed by them, and helping to get Palestinian security forces trained by these Arab countries, among them crucially 2 that would be the biggest sponsors, Egypt here and Saudi Arabia. The fact is that none of this will really get off the ground until there is a breakthrough in the ceasefire for hostage release talks taking place indirectly between Hamas and the Israelis in Doha. Now, Mr. Blinken said that he felt that the gap was narrowing on that they were getting closer to a breakthrough, though it certainly doesn't feel imminent at the moment. The next stop for the Secretary of State is Tel Aviv, with the US-Israeli relationship under severe stress at the moment. And I think key to those talks when Mr. Blinken meets Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be 2 issues. One will be the US trying to push the Israelis to flood aid into Gaza, humanitarian aid, with the UN-backed food monitor now saying that famine is imminent in the Gaza Strip. The other will be the Americans warning the Israelis not to carry out a full ground assault into Rafah, the city of Rafah. That's where Mr. Netanyahu has said they intend to do that. And so key points of difference that are going to be the key talking points of discussion in Tel Aviv today.
Tom Bateman there. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.